McDavid obviously have to talk about those comments. Obviously, he's interviewed yesterday. The media sort of like the locker room cleanout day, end of season availability, and McDavid. We don't have to go into the specifics, but is clearly not making any decisions on his future right now. That was the biggest takeaway. But more than anything, you look at it and think, okay, there was a lot of nuance to what his interview was saying, and bringing up the fact that, yeah, people want to make me, people think I'm going to make a decision on July 1st. I had to discuss it with my family. Winning is everything. With that being said, I have to look at this organization and see what's best for my family, my future. He didn't hint at anything, but I think he said a lot without saying anything. Justin, I know you probably had a lot of thoughts on it in terms of like what came out of that interview. I'm obviously nervous if I'm an Oilers fan, but at the end of the day, you're interviewing this guy 2 days after losing a cup. So I think everything with a grain of salt. What are your thoughts, Justin, first, and then Brandon?
So, I don't think that should make Oilers fans scared. It definitely left the door open for the possibility of maybe not signing an extension. That's 100% certain. If that makes you scared, then sure. But I don't think it was more so him saying, I don't want to be here or want to resign. It was more so calling out the Oilers brass and saying, I want to be here. If you can present me with the chance to win year in without, I want to sign that contract today. The contract will take care of itself. You don't have to worry about is the Edmonton Oilers going to pay Connor McDavid. That's not the issue. The issue with this is just like Quinn Hughes in Vancouver. Are you going to be a winning team? That's all these guys care about. Now, I do have one thing, and this is going to be a hot topic. If McDavid truly wants to win, if he really wants to win, basically what I mean is everything that he says is I want to win. I want to win. That's all he cares about. That's all he ever says. If he truly wants that, why don't you take a pay cut? And I'm not saying go take in $6 million. Why don't you sign 8 by 10? And that's because you already have a $100 million contract in the bank. That's $180 million if you signed for another 8 years. I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve $16 or $18 million. He's worth every freaking penny of whatever he wants. But if he wants to win, he's got to realize that there is Leon Draisaitl who's making $14 million. Yeah. There's Darnell Nurse who's making $9.25 million. There's Evan Bouchard who's probably going to be $10 million. And then there's going to be him if we go off what he thinks or what we expect him to make, which would be 16 at the bare minimum. That means there's $50 freaking million in 4 players. Ask the last team that loaded up with $50 million in 4 players how that worked out. Mm-hmm. Just simply, you can't win the cup that way. They want more depth. They want more pieces. Just take a little bit less money and let them add the pieces that you want to become the Stanley Cup champion and go on a dynasty run yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate that idea. I think it certainly would be, it would be commendable of McDavid to do that. But for me, that at least with the Oilers, I think that ship has sailed. I mean, as soon as Leon Draisaitl signed that big, I think it was like $112 million deal. Like you said, Justin, $14 million a year. There was no shot that Connor McDavid was going to take a dollar less than that, and that's not his fault. But that's just the way the market works. And if he took less than 10 or 12 or whatever, the players union would probably come down hard on him and his agent for messing up the market, because this guy is going to reset the market in the NHL. And it's only a good thing really for the league and the players to continue to, see those salaries increase for players. Yes. But I would agree that it will be near impossible for the Oilers to continue to build a team that can be as competitive as teams like Florida. I'll throw in Dallas, teams that, typically, we saw Dallas spend a little bit of money on Rantanen, but typically that don't spend too much on any individual players, and they look at their group and kind of whether they have an internal cap or they just look at their best players and what they think they're making, and they kind of have everyone fall in after that. It's a little bit more difficult when you have such superstar players at pretty much at the same time in Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl that are looking to hit their prime and obviously cash in as much as possible. And you kind of got to pay these guys to keep them in today's NHL. So I agree that it's going to be tough, but I think that they have a lot of work to do, and they're just going to have to be as efficient as possible. Try to keep that's why we're seeing Trent. We talked about, or me and you, Justin, off camera, we talked about Trent Frederick's deal potentially and what that could look like and why they might be doing that. Well, that's because they need that kind of cost certainty going forward. And if you can start bringing in guys where, okay, over the long haul, over a 6, 7, 8 years, exactly what they're going to be making, it makes it a little bit easier to manipulate, your salary cap and look to where you can make adjustments. But if you're just going, year by year, and like you said, you might have to see a Darnell Nurse traded, or maybe a guy like Evan Bouchard has to take a little bit less money, but I can't see it being Connor McDavid to do that. But I would definitely love to hear him at least say that he's thinking about it, or that he, wants to do what's best for the team. But in the end, like you said, it is all about, what he needs and what his family, and he wants to take care of his life. Right. So definitely going to be interesting. Yeah.
I fully get that, and I agree in the sense of like, get whatever money you think you want, but I just mean in the sense of if you really want to win, you probably have to understand like you're not going to win if you take a massive contract. Like that's something that he has to think about in the back of his mind, because then you have to think, how do they build a good team around me to compete? Or it just becomes the Toronto issue of, I'm just going to get my money that I want, and they can figure out the issue around me, whether they like it or not. Like, because like you look at it right now in Toronto, they have 13.25 million on the books. They have 11.5 million Nylander, and then their third highest paid forward right now is Max Domi at $3 million. Like, you can go and get a couple players in that $5 to $6 million range, which they have right now in Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Evander Kane. But if they sign McDavid to that big ticket and like give him every penny that he's worth, or like, sorry, if McDavid wants the big ticket, like I shouldn't say like if you want to sign him to that big ticket, if he wants the big ticket, then I think he has to think about like, I'm going to have to basically put the team on my back, and I'm going to have to drag them because they're simply not going to have the money to go and spend to bring in I guess like the more players that you can get in that like sweet spot, like in terms of like the $6 to $8 million range going forward in this new cap era, is like the quality players that it's going to take to win a Stanley Cup. Like, you look at the Florida Panthers right now. Obviously, they don't have anyone over $10 million in the top two players being on the dot, and Sergei Bobrovsky and Alexander Barkov. And then you're not telling me that Sam Reinhart's an $8.5 million player. Like, he's just simply not. He took a pay cut, like, to win. Like, that, like, it's ridiculous, the contracts that they have. And yes, you're going to say no state income tax and all this, but it's also partly they wanted to keep the group together. Like, he could have left for more money, right? Like,
well, quickly, I just wanted, the Reinhardt thing is interesting because I do agree that there are guys, amongst the league, there are many teams where there are guys who are probably not making as much as you'd think that they might be or could in the open market. But at the same time, like, I think it's so difficult when you're comparing guys like Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, we talk about Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, whatever, guys that are within the top, 15, 10 players in the league, wherever you want to put them. I think it's harder to kind of envision I guess what I would say is it's easier, I think, to project that guys who are in the middle, that 6 to 10 range in terms of millions making, I think it's easier to project those guys as making more than it is to look at the guys that will potentially make the most and say, well, they should take less. Because again, like Reinhart is a good example because he had been he had been in Buffalo and was seen as a guy who, potentially wasn't going to live up to the expectation of being such a high pick. So for Florida to come in and even if he had a year or two and then they sign him to a deal, it was never going to be to the amount of, $10 or $12 million because there just wasn't that kind of track record. So I do think it's easier to look back at guys now and say, wow, they're only making 10. Barkov is a, Selke winner and now 2-time Stanley Cup winner and captain of the best team in the NHL, and to say, yeah, well, he only made 10. Well, because when he signed that deal, that's kind of where the market was at. He hadn't accomplished any of those things yet.
Yes.
But Connor McDavid, even ahead, he's already making what he's already making 12 million, right? So that's fair market value because up to that point, Connor McDavid had proven that he was probably, and that's a great point too. It's all about where you're at when you come up on your deal, and unfortunately for Edmonton, they've had two guys that are, premier players, maybe you can argue the two best players in the league at times, and then they've just come up in the last 2 or 3 years, they both need to get paid, and it's unfortunate that that's kind of the way that it runs for them. And we saw Toronto go through the same thing, but you're 100% right, Justin. Like if they want to win, they're going to have to make some really, really tough decisions as a group. And that's not to say that Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and you throw in Bouchard, like these guys are capable of dragging these guys, deep in the playoffs. I think I would argue that we've seen that in the last 2 years. I wouldn't say necessarily that they're doing it all by themselves. They've had definitely contributions from other parts of the team, but when you look at the rosters, like both of these teams, 2024 and 2025, going into the season, Edmonton more so this year, but I never looked at their rosters and say, well, these guys are going to be world beaters for sure. And they're, up and down the lineup, they're the best team in the league or one of. I thought there were teams this year that had better rosters, but when you look at the just the talent and the almost the inevitability of a Connor McDavid and a Leon Draisaitl, if they can keep those guys around long term, obviously they've got Draisaitl signed, but McDavid and him, they'll give you a chance every year, it feels like, even if your roster's not up to snuff. So I guess it's up to them to figure out how they're going to kind of run it back, right? So
they'll give you a chance for sure, but then you can argue they had the chance when Draisaitl's on an $8.5 million contract, way of performing that for 8 years. And then for me, the Reinhart thing, just quickly to go back and rebuttal you, is but he scored 55 goals in that season, and then you have a guy in Toronto who just broke 40 and he gets 11.5. That to me doesn't make any sense.
Well,
for Reinhart to get 8.5 and for William Nylander to get 11.5, that one will not make any sense to me.
Yeah, then that's where the state tax, I think, comes in, and that's a whole different conversation. But I do think that factors in. And then
$3 million though.
Yeah, and it's the player and the agent. They're coming up with that. They're coming up with that decision. It's more. That's where I put it more so. And the team, obviously, for having the balls to kind of offer those low ball deals in some cases. But yeah, you need buy-in, and that's what we've seen from Florida and other teams. Not to say that McDavid's not going to buy into Edmonton. But
no, yes,
it's that's the argument, right?
I think we can all collectively agree that McDavid's most likely re-upping. He's not leaving Edmonton. I don't think.
I don't think you
I would
agree with that. I would agree, but I don't think it's a unanimous decision. I don't think he's necessarily going to decide I want to be here for 8 years. I can see him signing for 3 and saying, hey, I'm going to sign for 3. Yeah, it might be a higher AAV, but I want the decision to be made that I want to win. I want to be here. And obviously I'm proving by signing a shorter term deal. And you need to prove to me that you're going to put the pieces in place for me to win. Otherwise I can't sign for 8 years. And then we start declining halfway through that contract. What's that contract going to look like if you try and move me for 16 million or whatever it is? It's not going to happen. So I think there's going to be a lot of discussion. I honestly put my money on it. Yeah, he's going to stay. I don't know if it's for $8 million, unfortunately. Or sorry, 8 years specifically.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think like that is an honest conversation that could be had here in the months. Like, what does an extension with him look like? It might, like, if he wants the commitment of we're gonna win now moment or win now window where we're gonna try and win year after year. Maybe it is just a 3 to 4 year deal that he signed because he's 29. That will take him to 33, and if they haven't won a cup by that time, well then like maybe
He's still got
it's
plenty of time.
Maybe it's time to go chase the cup. Like,
Yeah, he'll have plenty of time because most players, like you look at certain players at 33, they slow down, and I don't know, McDavid.
Sidney Crosby's not slowing down.
Well,
so
that's the
yeah,
thing is
like,
those main players. Now, the thing is, McDavid, will he a massive part of his game is speed, and obviously you're not going to maintain that. A guy like John Tavares has never been fast, and that's why he's able to put up the numbers he is at this age because he thinks the game differently. Now, McDavid is the best player I've ever seen live. Like, there's no question about it, but you do get a little, I'm getting away from the point that he's not going to be a bad player at 33 years of age. Like, he's obviously going to have opportunity. So that's why I think the deal works for him to short term. I still agree with you, Justin, getting back to the taking less money. I don't think he's going to take like less money that he's earning right now, nor do I think he's going to make less than Draisaitl. It is a part of you're setting the market. Even with a rising cap, you're going to be able to take more money. But you look at I just want to bring up Crosby. You bring up Crosby.
Exactly.
He's made 8.7 for his entire career. You bring up McKinnon. Now he's making a little more, but for a few years he was on the most team-friendly contract ever.
6 years, 6.3.
And it allows you to build those players.
Cale Makar 6x9, like those. That is a steal of a deal.
Exactly. Now they're gonna literally empty the Brinks truck for Cale Makar, right? And so, like at a certain point, it's just inevitable that you're gonna have to pay top end players absorbent amounts of money. The Leafs are obviously a great example. Now, I think now people are looking that situation in hindsight, like Kyle Dubas, rookie GM, got fleeced by players and agents that have been in the game for longer. So that situation, I look at it.
But I think did we lose Mando?
Yeah, we lost Mando.
Go
ahead.
But like, I was just gonna say, the difference is, for me. I think we have you back, Mando. The difference for me is, like, for these big ticket guys that you talked about, Mando, like, right out of the gate, Matthews signs a massive deal. Marner signs a massive deal. That led to the demise of not being able to build a roster around them. When McKinnon and these guys signed for less and took team-friendly deals, what did we see happen? We saw a championship roster get created around a player that's on a team-friendly deal. The same thing kind of like it can be said for Connor McDavid. Although Connor McDavid's the best player in the league, he did skyrocket to a massive deal that was worth every single penny. But when you did that, then it took away more opportunity to sign other players. Like when McKinnon's on a deal for $6.3 million a year, that's $6.3 million a year. It could have been $12 million a year at the time, but like he signed for 6.3. That gives you that extra flexibility, like to go out and add a Turi Lehkonen, or go out and add. I'm trying to think, a Samuel Girard who they drafted and then paid, and then you have Josh Manson who they ended up bringing in. They have Valerie.
You brought Kadri in for a bit, right? You had Kadri be able to fit.
Like you know what I mean? Like so like under a team friendly contract, they're able to, like, it seems that way, where teams are able to build championship rosters around them, and then once, like, you know, those contracts are up, it's time to pay the guys that like have actually put in the work. And you know, McKinnon and Makar definitely deserve every single buck they're gonna earn. I just think when McDavid signed that big contract, yes, he deserved every freaking penny. And let me state that because I don't want anyone to think I'm not saying that McDavid deserved every penny that he ever got. I just think that when you do that, it takes away the opportunity to then build a championship roster around him, if that makes sense.